Welcome, everybody. My name's Peter Meissen. I'm the director here at the Sim Center. Many of you have been here before, but I see a bunch of new people, right? Somebody who's never been here before? I see a very nice. Well, thank you for coming tonight. Let me do a quick introduction of where you're at, because people come in here for the first time and they go, what is this place? All right, I'll describe it quickly. It's an immersive visualization facility. I think you can see that real quickly. We're going to surround you in content tonight and imagery around this topic of actually how do we measure, how do we get to 100% renewable, how do we meet these climate action plans. So, and we have an outstanding presenter, because she drove this initiative into reality in our city with Nicole, and we have a special guest with Cody. I would say Hooven or Hoven? Hooven. And Cody is our City of San Diego point person to actually meet these targets for the city. So she's here to actually discuss these with Nicole. So we have, I'm going to say, the person that made it happen and the person who's responsible on the city side to actually, put these targets into place. So I'm thrilled to have that. The Sim Center was an original original idea from a man named Buckminster Fuller. Most of you know Bucky from what? Buckminster Fuller is most well known for what? Geodesic domes. There you go. And if you've been in chemistry, these new things called buckyballs that are a lot like a soccer ball. And I'm going to do a little commercial for a play that's coming up next month over here at the Lyceum Theater. We uncled the play into existence about a decade ago. It's called Buckminster Fuller, The History and Mystery of the Universe. I'm way biased on this play, but I think it's one of the best one-man shows ever produced. It's educational, it's poignant, it's entertaining, and provocative, all in that. It starts from March 10 through April 3rd. We're going to have a bunch of events in here next month around that. You'll see it on our calendar. And so we'd love for you to participate in that play, because you'll see here's the genius underpinning the place that you're in. So the Sim Center was originally Buckminster Fuller's idea. He said we needed a place to get together, surround ourselves in trends, in projections for the future, and make smarter decisions quicker. So that's really our mission, is to how do you visualize sustainable solutions to both global and local problems so we make smarter decisions quicker. So that's why we're here. And I thank you for being here tonight for the first time people, and for those of you who come back, thanks for coming back again. I know we have some members here tonight to honor those. If you're a member, you get to come to these for free. I think you saw that on the Eventbrite. If you don't, we ask you to at least make a small donation to cover our food costs and beverage costs, that sort of thing. So we have events here all the time. At the end of tonight, I'll tell you something that we're doing great next Wednesday night and invite you to that as well. This is our partnership evening with the San Diego Renewable Energy Society. Stephen Johnston is the president of that. He called me. He's still on his way. Jamal is not here. So this is our partnership with the Renewable Energy Society. We have a pledge with that team to have San Diego be 100% renewable. You're going to see the drivers behind that. We have 3 other partners. Nicole's organization is the Climate Action Campaign, the U.S. Green Chamber for San Diego, and the Equinox Project, which you'll see some of their work here this evening. So that's something that you can actually enroll into on our website and do at your personal home where you live. There's a whole scenario where you can be greener as a renter, as a homeowner, as a business person, as a city. So that's what that website will give you options to do at a gold, silver, bronze, and platinum level. And if you want to, silver level is real, or bronze level is real easy. What do you have to do at the bronze level? Turn the lights off. Right? Be more efficient. You don't have to spend a dime. It's the 100% renewable campaign. We'll get the website up here for you too. At the platinum level, you got to spend some money to be fully green if in this space. And I'm going to say at that level, we ask you to consider putting solar on your rooftop and maybe get an electric car or a Prius or a hybrid car, because that's the level to actually really reduce your own footprint. And with regard to that, we don't normally have a sponsor, but we do tonight. And you see their logo up around here. Thanasi was our former former marketing person here, and he jumped ship and joined Solar City. So it's a perfect move for him because he's a great marketer. And he asked us if Solar City could sponsor this evening, give you a little bit short story with a video and a little bit. So if you're considering solar, it is the biggest national company in this space. And so Thanasi, would you like to come up and do that? Great. So this is Thanasi Glavas.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. It's good to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces for this lovely evening. Thank you to our speakers for joining us. Basically, I wanted to just say that solar is within everyone's reach. It is affordable, it is accessible, and it does make a huge impact. In regards to the 100% renewable campaign, it is that platinum level, but that's something that I would like to see every home go solar and make an impact. It's easy to do so. Please just speak to me briefly and we can set something up. But beyond that, actually, if you don't have the ability to go solar, if you're a renter or if you've already gone solar, I would employ you to bring more people into the fold. It is a movement. We do need more people to make an impact. And ultimately, we want to see the whole city be 100% renewable by 2035, and that includes residential. So please think it over and speak with me if you have any questions or concerns. But thank you very much for all coming, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Oh, also, here's a great video that highlights the mission of Solar City, which is an Elon Musk company.
For dirty power, or paying less for clean power, what would you do? The sun produces more energy in one day than it consumes in a year.
The spark of Solar City came from deep concern over climate change. We looked at the way that energy was being delivered, and we realized that solar, and especially the part of delivering solar to the end customer, was being largely neglected.
Almost all of the energy that Earth receives comes from the sun. And it really takes a very small amount of Earth's surface area to generate all the electricity that humanity could ever need.
Solar City has come up with a disruptive solution. We can now install solar equipment for free and just sell the electricity. And that
Solar City does is to enable a cleaner, more affordable alternative to one's utility. The challenge and the opportunity that we had was to build a massive delivery mechanism for installing and deploying solar at a scale that has never been seen before in this country.
That is fantastic to watch our customers' expressions when they turn on the system for the first time and see the new benefits. You can see the sense of independence and controlling their own electricity. Solar City's vision is to give every homeowner of every business an option for electricity that is cheaper and cleaner.
When we first start with a customer, we're engaged in a minimum 20-year relationship.
This 100-year-old electricity infrastructure needs to change.
What's happening in this really exciting transformation will result in rooftop solar being seen everywhere. I think Solar City has been successful because of the fact that we have a long-term perspective on this problem.
Solar City is showing that there's a path here to having economically viable, sustainable energy.
Solar is finally ready to become a mainstream power source for all the people on Earth.
So thank you, Thanasi, for sponsoring this evening. How many of you have solar on your rooftop now? Quite a few. All right. What's your bill?
$140
A month? Jack?
it's going to be zero
All right. What's your bill a month? Mine's $5. $5 electricity bill.
I pay $140 to the company that puts
Okay.
I don't pay anything.
Down to zero. Right? So whatever you're paying, it can get to zero depending on who you choose. Solar City's one. I don't know. Are there any other companies tonight that are providers? No. Solar City, you get the business. All right, thank you again. So what we'd like to do is do a setup this evening, and some of you that are sitting at computers, I'm going to ask your help for this a little bit. And Stine, we want to do the PowerPoint. Stine, if you're sitting at a computer that says 1 through 12 on it, at the bottom, and Michael, just do escape 13, right? Yeah, they should be set up, and I'll go around if they're not. So I want to introduce Stine Brenton. Okay, Stine is from Norway, and I never remember last names very well, and I always mess them up. Stine has been one of our terrific volunteers here, and she's working on one project, which is the GENI computer model, which is a very sophisticated time zone defined model of how do you develop renewables all the way around the world and integrate them. A couple of months ago, she says, I want another project. And Bryony, who you met last year, was doing this for us. She had to go back, and she had a baby, and so she had to go back to Europe. So Stine has taken on this role of being our project manager for the 100% renewable project. And so she's going to give you a very quick background on what the city has done. And again, we've taken a huge commitment within the city, so I'll help you if you need any slides figured out, but where there's a quick 12 slide show. So this is giving you the background on what we've already pledged and some of the trends that we already have in our city. And you're going to see that this is a major effort to ultimately meet the goals that we've set for. So Stine?
Okay. Thank you, Peter. First, we just get the slides set up. Okay, number 3 has to go to number 3, for instance. Okay. So the topic of tonight is, now we have a climate action agreement. What now? Many of you are probably very familiar with the topic and the climate action plan. Some has maybe not even heard about it before. So now, before I let Nicole go into the details and everything, I was just thinking about giving a basic introduction to the climate action plan so everybody knows what we're actually talking about. So, what is the Climate Action Plan? Well, it is a plan that is taking care of issues in the climate and the environmental sector for San Diego from the 1st of January 2016 to the 31st of December 2035. You can see it as an interim plan for reducing the greenhouse gas emission to 80% below 1990 level by 2050. This is a statewide goal set by former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. And you can also look at it as a plan for increasing the quality of life for the people of San Diego. This will be done by making sure that everyone has a steady income of water and energy, and also by reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, the quality of air will be so much better. This plan was unanimously approved by the San Diego City Council in December 2015, and we're very happy about that, of course. So, when starting to make this plan, you need a starting point. Here it shows the 2010 emission level. That is the, on this graph, it's the orange line in the middle. If we don't do anything at all, just continue the exact same way we were going, they predict we are going to have emissions like the blue line on top. This is because of population growth, etc., etc. So that will mean increased emissions. But if we do follow the plan, we hope to follow the line on the bottom here and reduce the emissions dramatically. Well, where does the emissions come from? A big part of it comes from the transportation sector, 55%. Other than that, we have from, whoops, there we go. Sorry. Other than that, we have from electricity and some other things, and to get the emissions reduced dramatically as we want to, we need to make cuts everywhere. We can't just do one thing. That's why the city made 5 strategies. The first strategy is the energy and water efficient buildings, is what they called it. you have many goals and targets here. The first goal is to reduce residential building energy consumption. Those can turn on, that's okay. So the goal is to reduce, no, the target is to reduce energy use by 15% per unit in 20% of residential housing units by 2020 and 50% of units by 2035. There's also a goal to reduce municipal energy consumption. And if you look at this graph, it's a little hard for you, but you can see it later. I'm sure you've seen it before, Nicole. So this is the daily per capita residential electricity consumption. You can see we're still pretty high up. These numbers are from 2012, and the goal by 2020 is all the way down here for California, the target. So we have a way to go, but we have started very well. To meet the 2035 target, it's going to go even further down. So the next goal is to reduce daily per capita water consumption. The target will be to reduce the daily per capita water consumption by 4 gallons per person per day by 2020 and 9 gallons by 2035. It's also a goal to implement an outdoor landscaping ordinance that requires use of weather-based irrigation controllers. If you look at this graph, you can see how much water we used compared to how much rainfall it was. And you can see that most years, for the last 14 years, we used more water than it actually was rainfall. Of course, this makes a drought, which is of course not good. So to have sustainable water in the future, we will have to reduce the water consumption. Okay, moving further. This was just strategy number 1. Strategy 2 is clean and renewable energy. The goal we are very excited about is, of course, that they are going to achieve 100% renewable energy citywide by 2035. Oh yeah, I know, it was suddenly nowhere. So, 100% renewable by 2035. If you look at this graph, this again, it's data from 2013. It's here at about 24%. I know we are higher now, but we're still far away from 100. But hopefully we are going to get there. For sure. For sure. I like the confidence. Okay, so we also have other goals. It's to increase municipal zero-emission vehicles and convert existing diesel municipal solid waste collection trucks to compressed natural gas or other alternative low-emission fuels. These goals are, of course, to reduce the emissions and by that give better quality of air. Okay, moving further, strategy number 3. Biking, walking, and transit. If you look at this circle diagram, you can see that how it is right now, 75% of people drive alone to work. Only 3% use mass transit, and 75% drive alone, as I said. Very few are using their bikes, and very, very few, less than 1% is walking. So, you have some goals. You want to increase the use of mass transit. Of course, hopefully get all the way up to 25% by 2035. And you also want to increase commuter walking opportunities. So it's easier to walk, and commuter bicycling opportunities, easier to take your bike, have more bike path, make it safer. You also, of course, want to reduce vehicle fuel consumption. There are plans to do that by retiming 200 traffic lights to make it more efficient and installing roundabouts, 35 in total by 2035. Roundabouts has been proven to be more efficient than lights very often. Also, to promote efficient land use to reduce vehicles miles traveled. If you look at this graph, you can see that San Diego, we are the big, thick line on top. We travel more per person on highways than other counties that we like to compare ourselves to. This is, of course, something we want to do something about. Make people travel less by car and travel less in general, which will give less emissions.
Can I just jump in? How many
Yes.
of you, right? How many of you rode transit tonight? How many of you came in one of those other public ways? Bike, transit? I know we have a couple bikers up there, walkers.
Oops, sorry.
5 or 6?
Carpool, better than car alone, but still.
5 or 6. We want to get to 26% in this target. So citywide? Citywide. So it's a heavy lift. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay,
you wanna-
yeah, that's
okay.
It's always nice to do a check of how we're doing in the room. You guys are leaders usually in this room. We want to see where we stand.
Okay, super. Hopefully, in 2035, at least 25% has taken mass transit. Okay, strategy 4, zero waste. Here, the goal is to divert solid waste and capture landfill methane gas emissions. And the target is to divert 75% of solid waste by 2020 and 90% by 2035. As you see from the graph, the waste has gone a little down from what it used to be, but now it's kind of peaking a little bit up again. And it's still pretty far away from where it should be. So here's also some work to do. Another goal is to capture methane from wastewater treatment and hope to get near 100%, 98, by 2035. Okay, so the last strategy, climate resiliency. The goal here is basically to increase urban tree canopy coverage. And I hope I said canopy right. Nice. So this, for those who doesn't know what that is, that's basically if you look from the air view, look down, whoops, what happened there? Oh, no worries. So that's basically if you're looking from the air and look down on San Diego, it's how much is shaded by the trees. So then the goal is to, by 2035, have 35% urban tree coverage. Okay. So now we have a super basic introduction to what is the actual goals. The next question, which I hope we will get answered today, is, for instance, how do we measure progress? What is the key metrics and targets? What are the biggest challenges? And how do we ensure that we meet our goals? These are questions I find important, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of other questions as well. So I give the word back to Peter.
Would you ever begin? Obviously not our native language, but if you go to Norway, they are 99% renewable as a country. 99% renewable. Wow, okay? So there, you can do that as a country, not just a city. So we have something to learn from others. I'm going to have to keep moving, okay, Ray? All right, so just, so what I'd like to do now, it's hydropower. Yeah, hydropower. Nicole Capretz, Executive Director of the Climate Action Campaign. For those of you that are on one of those computers, again, would you hit escape? Top left button, escape. And there's another slideshow, and we'll go around and help you. At the bottom, it says CAP. It says CAP. Would you click on that? And we'll help you go around, and we'll get this set up for you, Nicole, as we go around, all right? But Nicole is Nicole's a powerhouse in our community, and I really do want to acknowledge this woman before we get started. She used to be with the Environmental Health Coalition and worked with them for years on the Climate Action Plan, just within that organization and the work that they do for our community. Todd Gloria, when he was interim mayor, brought Nicole on. We had to do a climate action plan for the city of San Diego. She took this on. She authored it. I want to say, I don't give her all prop. I'm sure there were other authors around it, but she was the driver behind putting this together. This is a 70-page plan, ultimately, that got adopted, and it got reviewed by our city. It was unanimously voted in December. That's almost unimaginable for our city to completely say we're fully on board for this, and the mayor. So before we even start, She deserves a standing ovation. At least give her a big hand, okay? And now she's running the climate action campaign, and the goal of that campaign is to keep the cities and the counties' feet to the fire to actually meet these targets. All right, so that's their mission now. The other person that will be with us is Cody. She will be an intervener or a not a moderator, but a discussant along with us to actually work together and say, how do we meet these questions that we just had at the end? So with that, Nicole, thank you for being here.
Of course.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, of course. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. So this is a really exciting time in the city of San Diego because we basically, passed this groundbreaking plan. We are the largest city in the United States to have a legally binding commitment to 100% clean energy. I think that's pretty incredible that we have positioned ourselves on the national landscape, and we are basically setting the standard. We are setting the bar for all other, specifically large cities in the United States. For example, right after the climate plan passed, I was called by a really popular radio show in Los Angeles, and I was asked to go talk at the same time as the LA mayor's office. And basically, the radio host kept prodding the mayor's office of LA to say, well, where's our 100% legally binding climate plan? Like, the mayor's their office kept trying to talk around it and just say, well, every city has a different approach. We're gonna get there in our own way, and we're all partners in this all together. And the radio host was like, no, really, like, where's our 100% clean energy climate plan? And so it was, to me, that means we won, because that's the point. The point is that obviously we want to be leaders in this space, but we also want to make sure that this plan gets scaled and replicated, right? I mean, that's what we need to do, because ultimately we are all in this together. But it's going to take literally a huge paradigm shift to even get close to making sure that we are protecting our future for the next generation. I mean, what I always tell everybody whenever I present is that, I know there's some probably younger millennials in the room, or some, I'm definitely not a millennial, but it's not just the millennials. I don't even know who comes after millennial. Who are the 5-year-olds? I don't even know what 5-year-olds are called. But that's really who we're talking about. I mean, we are literally, trying to ensure that they survive. I mean, that's this kind of stakes that are that we're confronted with. So I think what we're doing is really just trying to kind of rectify the ramifications of burning dirty fossil fuels for so many years, and what that means, and what we need to do to change that. So I did work in the city of San Diego. I was able to help author this climate plan and help it be adopted. But really now, because a lot of people look at me and they're skeptical because, hey, so Republican mayors passed this. I mean, is it legit? Is he serious about this? Did he just pass this plan and then he's going to, kind of go run for office at a higher level and kind of just use this plan to, help him get to a higher platform while not really implementing the plan, right? And honestly, I don't know for sure the answer, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure this plan is implemented. I will say one thing for sure, that the mayor did hire Cody Hooven, who is here tonight, and she's a rock star. And if anybody's going to get this plan implemented at the city and make sure the mayor stays on task, it's her, because she's a true blue environmental advocate, and she, I know, will do everything in her power to keep us on course. But nonetheless, you need outside community pressure, right? And that's exactly why I left the city. And I knew that it was critically important that we continue to build a base of support in the community so that our mayor knew he was going to be held accountable, but also our mayor knew that and our council, that what he did was the right thing, and that the community is behind him, right? And them. That the community actually wants them to implement this plan. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I've worked for 3 different elected officials now. Leaders don't lead, they follow. I really adhere to that principle. And they follow because they listen to their constituents. And if the constituents are telling them, what are you doing on this climate plan, then they're motivated. Then they're actually going to achieve these goals. So that's the purpose of my organization, Climate Action Campaign. So, the initial question is, what next? To me, it's watchdogging. And that's exactly what my organization is doing. And then, like Peter mentioned, we are, I also believe firmly that the whole region needs to convert to 100% clean energy, so we are working on climate plans in other cities, and I'll touch on that at the very end. But specifically, what we need to do at the city is make sure, like the mechanics initially for the next few months are, what the heck's happening in next year's budget? is the mayor actually allocating enough resources to implement this plan, right? Because we need infrastructure. We need to actually make sure that we are building the compact mixed-use development and the bike lanes and the sidewalks and the opportunity for better transit. Like, there has to be an investment in that infrastructure to make that happen. So we are monitoring how that budget looks. This is just an old picture of the mayor actually signing last year's budget, because it's a very serious affair. I don't know, what is our budget at the city? $1 billion? I mean, we are the 8th largest city in the country. So we have hundreds of millions of dollars that we allocate each year for services and infrastructure. So we just need to make sure that it's actually going toward the goals of the climate plan. And the other thing that we are waiting on, that Cody is responsible for, that the mayor promised, was an actual implementation plan for the climate plan. So again, it's great that we passed this plan. There's a lot of metrics that we can talk about. But at the end of the day, it's about specifically, okay, so exactly how are we breaking down this plan? What are we tackling first? What's in the first phase of implementation? And what is it going to cost? And what resources do we need to get there? So Cody, lucky her, will be, I believe, still in April, unveiling this plan that I cannot wait to see, that will let us know exactly what is the mayor's plan. And then obviously we'll give feedback and we'll say, this is great, this is fantastic. Or we'll be like, no, not even close. Like, you need to do a lot more. And obviously we're more in partnering than that. It's not like she's totally operating in a vacuum here. She's already communicating with us. But that's what we're waiting for. So April will be kind of one of the first metrics for the community to see what the mayor's plans are, and obviously as well an opportunity for the community to give input in kind of what the mayor is doing. So when I talk about the climate plan, there are kind of two, I think, extraordinary goals. One is the 100% clean energy by 2035, and the other is a massive shift in how we're moving people around the city, particularly for commutes. Right? So I know the slide earlier said 70 something, but in the city of San Diego, it's 87% single driver commuters. 87% in 2016. That's insane in a major metropolitan area, right? You don't really see that in other major US cities that you go to. So the question is, how in the world is that going to, this major shift going to happen? So that slide is just, again, that red bar is the 87%, and then you see the other little tiny bars, that's the biking, walking, and transit. Biking, walking, transit. And then by 2035, you again see that huge shift where we're trying to get only half of the people would be driving alone to work, and the rest we would be taking biking, walking, transit. So the question is, how does that happen? The majority, and this shows the interface with other entities in the region and other agencies. It's not just the city who will enable this plan to come to fruition. We have a regional transportation agency. They have, again, hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal that will determine what our transportation future looks like. So the question is, are they compliant? Are they partnering with the city? Are they trying to help the city comply with their transportation goals? For those of us in the environmental community, we've been very public about saying they are not. They have a 40-year, a 30-year, or 40-year plan that basically just extends our car-centric culture. They just want to extend and expand freeways. That is basically how they see our future for the next 30 years. Whereas the city just passed a plan that says the opposite. So now what? That's kind of where we're still at. So we did a report, actually, that showed the climate plan is trying to get 50% of commuters out of their car. And the SANDAG plan, that again is also looking out 30 years, has invested infrastructure and resources to get about 15% of the people out of their car. Huge disconnect. So what's going to happen there? That's another area of watchdogging and communication with the mayor's office and the city about how we're going to change that. And something very specific happening now is that our regional transportation agency, they're called SANDAG, is actually considering a ballot measure to raise our sales tax for our transportation future, to invest in our transportation future. What they're proposing, basically, is what you see on the screen, extending and expanding freeways as the kind of signature way of moving people around the city and the region. So again, here we have the city that's saying we're going to completely change the paradigm, and then we have kind of this regional entity saying, not really. So what do we do? And that's kind of one of the, again, kind of what's next questions. So there is a coalition of about 20 regional organizations that I'm part of that's basically fighting our regional transportation agency. And we're asking the mayor and the council to step up and engage as well. Because we can't spend billions of dollars on expanding freeways and ever hope to achieve our climate goals. So then what happens, right? This is a legally binding plan of the city. They are basically vulnerable to being sued for not hitting these targets. And yet they also need the money from the taxes that our regional transportation agency has. Who would sue them? My environmental friends. I mean, yeah, they're basically allowed. There's a private attorney general lawsuit provision that allows plaintiffs' attorneys to sue the city. They're accountable for achieving these goals. So that's kind of a huge point of leverage for the community. And that's, in my opinion, the only way we're going to get the mayor and the council to move in a new direction. Like that was one of the major battles I fought internally at City Hall when I was there, was whether the city's climate plan was going to be legally binding or whether it was going to be voluntary and aspirational, right? A threshold question. And I think anybody, I've been doing politics and policy for 15 years. Anybody who has been doing work in this sphere knows that without a legal commitment, without a regulation or a mandatory kind of call, then local governments are, they're not going to invest the resources and they're not going to care. It's to become, it's going to fall down the wayside in terms of priorities. So it's really important, and that's something I'm happy to say the mayor and council continued, was to make sure this plan was legally binding. So, but then I do want to acknowledge that yes, our regional transportation agency, unfortunately, is kind of stuck in the past and the outdated mode of thinking about how we move people around the region. But it's, they're not alone. There are plenty of cities and community members who also struggle with the idea of, could we really be San Diego be a world-class transportation region with public better transit and biking and walking capabilities? I mean, I think people have never seen it, so it's hard to imagine that vision. And so I just kind of put up some of the challenges that we even face at a local level, where one of the ways that you get people to feel that they can, take transit, right, ride their bike to work or walk, is to have compact mixed-use development. So people are living closer to where they work. And that's, again, kind of also a new paradigm for the city. And so some communities, we have more suburban communities than not. We have more, again, freeways than not, are concerned about that. That's an area of fear, that change. That, again, we're just kind of used to the old suburban paradigm. So how do we communicate with the community and show that this would actually lead to better public health and a higher quality of life in San Diego? That's one of the challenges. And again, we're all used to driving in our cars. I mean, I don't even remember how many people didn't take cars here, but I mean, the reality is we haven't invested in the infrastructure to make it a viable option for the majority of people, especially when they're traveling to work. And then, of course, you have, existing developers in our community who are used to suburban developments. And so it's sort of getting them to also understand that there's a potential new paradigm in how to build. And then there's the political will. Again, if leaders don't lead, they follow, and the community is kind of saying, we fear change and we don't necessarily want more, compact mixed-use development, that puts them in a tough spot. So this kind of I'm just kind of demonstrating the synergy between the challenges we face, which is kind of an agency, an entity, our regional transportation agency, SANDAG, that's kind of stuck in the past. And then you have communities that are also afraid of what the new future could look like. So there's a lot of groundwork to do. And again, that's why my organization, we go out in the communities, we try to do the education, we try to be the trusted messenger about why we are kind of shifting our priorities of the city and how we grow and develop and how we move people around. But it's a tough slog. It's challenging. So that's the transportation side, which again, is kind of a beast and really hard to figure out exactly how we're going to be successful. And then you have the whole paradigm of, okay, so right now we're mostly powered by dirty fuels, natural gas. How do we shift that paradigm? Because as everybody knows, there's one electricity provider in the region. You can't move to San Diego, you can't move to another apartment or house in San Diego without calling one entity. Who's that? Right, you don't have an option. They literally have a monopoly. So the question is our utility company prepared to get us to 100% clean energy by 2035? I would argue they're not. And in fact, their official letter to the city on the climate plan basically said they viewed dirty natural gas as integral to our energy future. They're basically saying we're not going to get there. Okay, so what do we do? And we knew that at the city as we were developing the plan. So we looked at what was available statewide, and there's this amazing program called Community Choice Energy that allows local governments to basically break away from the utility and purchase electricity on behalf of all the residents and businesses. And it's been successfully implemented in Northern California, and there's kind of this incredible domino effect that's happening throughout the state, especially in Northern California. It's sort of moving its way down to Southern California. Because what happens when you inject competition into the marketplace? Prices drop. You get innovation. You get efficiencies. That's capitalism in its best form. And so, obviously the monopoly isn't, necessarily thinking this is a great idea because they've had control for 134 years. But at the same time, we have this goal for 100% clean energy. We have to get there somehow. We have to do things differently, and that's one of our proposals. So again, I just point out, is SDE going to get us there when right now the majority of our power is dirty? The state did require all the utilities throughout the state to get to 50% clean energy by 2030, but again, that gets us halfway there. 50% is not what the city is saying. We want 100. And then unfortunately, San Diego Gas and Electric is building in 2016 new dirty fuel power plants, right? So these are assets that they're developing that we will be paying for the next 30 years. If they're developing that kind of new infrastructure now, that pretty much tells you how committed they are to helping the city get to 100% clean energy. They're not. And unfortunately, they also, and this is a project I'm really kind of upset about, is that they have a project to build a pipeline that we would all pay for to basically transmit gas from all the frack gas that comes from Central California all the way down Southern California into Baja California so they can ship it to Asia. And they want us to pay for that pipeline, right? So again, perpetuating kind of this dirty fuel infrastructure. That to me lets us know that they're not committed to 100% clean energy future. So one of the things the city agreed to evaluate in the climate plan was this idea of community choice energy. So that is another area of focus for those of us that are kind of watchdogging the city to make sure that they're actually doing that study and doing it in a deliberative and effective way. And I think so far we're on a good path. It's been a little bumpy and it's challenging. Don't get me wrong, because SDG has plenty of influence over elected officials, and they want to slow down that process. They want to interrupt the flow of that process. And unfortunately, they also submitted an application to be able to use their shareholder dollars to market against community choice energy. That's something that we're fighting, but nonetheless, it's probably going to happen. So there's going to be an onslaught, right, of marketing everywhere, sort of scaring people about this idea, even though there's, like I said, examples of it being successfully implemented in other parts of the state. But that's what we have to grapple with. Like this idea, this tension, just like in the transportation world, we have to deal with in the energy world of entrenched interests that have always, kind of committed to the status quo. How do we disrupt that? It's not easy. And that's exactly, kind of the idea of what's next and what it's going to take and why it's so important for the community to stay engaged and involved and kind of promote this idea of a new vision for the city. And then kind of the area of the plan that everybody acknowledges is probably the weakest is, okay, so it's great, even if we move to 100% electric cars tomorrow, or none of us drove gas-powered cars, and we had 100% electricity, clean electricity, even then, all the scientists, and I know you guys have had a lot of script scientists come down and convey this, even then, the planet's changing, right? The temperature is rising. It's going to be a hotter, drier planet. We are going to experience sea level rise. We are going to experience more intense, frequent fires, right? We are going to experience the heat waves like today. My God, what in the world's going on? This is the new reality, no matter what we do, no matter how much we transform our existing systems. So that being said, what are we doing to prepare, right? We kind of know where the areas of ground zero are for sea level rise. It includes downtown, includes Mission Beach, includes Coronado. And I know on the coastal areas, they're grappling with, right, the erosion of, and this has been in the news lately, the erosion of cliffs and seawalls and what that means for people who are living right on those own property right on those cliffs. What does that mean? Who pays for it? Do we retreat gracefully? Do we all invest with our taxpayer dollars to protect their personal property? I mean, these are the questions we have to deal with. So the city has agreed in the climate plan to have a whole separate analysis of how we're going to prepare for a hotter, drier San Diego. So that's another area of kind of what's next. And I know Cody could talk more about what the city's going to be doing on that front, but it's vitally important. The one element in the climate plan that addresses this is that urban tree canopy we were talking about earlier, because obviously we have these urban heat islands, right? We have a lot of concrete and asphalt that only exacerbate the intensity of the heat as it comes down. We don't have a lot of trees. We especially don't have a lot of trees in any kind of middle or lower income areas, right? You probably go to La Jolla or Rancho Bernardo or Rancho Santa Fe, you're going to see plenty of trees because they invest in them and they put that infrastructure there themselves. But at the end of the day, it's going to be critically important to cool down the city with trees. And they provide all sorts of other benefits as well, including helping with air quality and things like that. But also, you know, who doesn't want to live on a tree-lined street? I mean, talk about increasing property value. There's a win-win-win-win-win with doing urban tree canopy, and the city is committed to doing that. But that's just one of the strategies to address the dangers of a changing climate. And then, like I said, the other reality is that we cannot operate in a vacuum. Right? I mean, we are kind of the biggest entity in the region, but we are not going to be effective if everybody else in the region is not moving forward. And we kind of have seen that when we went to and have been working with and are still addressing the transportation issue. Because even though our representatives from the city of San Diego are at this point agreeing that we need to transform the way we move people around and we need a world-class transportation system, we need to be like London and New York and San Francisco, and now LA even is going to be kind of leapfrogging us in terms of identifying different ways to move people around. But you know, you get the mayors of El Cajon or Lemon Grove, and I'm not being completely fair to all these folks because I can't remember exactly who, and I don't want to totally call it any particular one city. But the farther east you get, right, or even in North County, the less they're kind of committed to this idea of moving people around without using cars. They're not there yet. So what does that mean? That means there's tension amongst the cities about what their future looks like. And yet we're tied together. All the tax dollars are kind of intermixed, especially on the transportation side. And I would argue that it also would benefit us on the energy side. That if all the cities in the region are saying to San Diego Gas and Electric, we want 100% clean energy, you're going to see a lot more cooperation, right? You're going to see a lot more synergy and kind of partnership. And that's just not happening. Instead, there's a lot of divide and conquering happening amongst all the cities by all the kind of existing interests. So that's just another area that's going to be critical. And this slide, where are we at in terms of, you know, as a region, where we're at with our climate emissions, where we need to be given state law. That black line is where we're projected to go with business as usual. As a region, again, not just the city of San Diego, as a region, so all 18 cities in the county of San Diego. And then the dotted line is where we're supposed to be by 2030 and where we're supposed to be by 2050. So unfortunately, that black line is where our regional transportation agency says they're going to take us with their Freeway First plan, right? So they're not even getting us close, not even on a trajectory to hit our state climate targets as a region. They are basically saying, that's interesting that the state has these climate targets, but we don't care. I mean, that's in essence what's going on. So what do we do, right? I mean, that's, again, the question. We don't have all the answers. I definitely don't have all the answers. But that's just an area for the conversation tonight about what's next. And it's not easy. There's just nothing easy about it. The only other good part, and I'll just go to other cities on the move, and happy to take any questions, by the way, and we can engage Cody in this conversation too. The little bright spot, I would say, is that there are a lot of cities. You know, the city of San Diego was kind of the first one to actually adopt a legally binding climate plan with these mandatory targets. And hopefully they're setting the standard that the other cities will mimic, but remains to be seen. Certainly a lot of advocacy and mobilizing and organizing needs to happen to make it happen. But we have Del Mar coming up this year, Solana Beach, Encinitas, La Mesa, Santee, Chula Vista, Oceanside, San Diego. And my organization, by the way, is working in all those cities, which is not easy. But it's pivotal. I mean, again, I truly believe that it's only when we start acting as one region and all our cities are kind of moving in the same direction that we're going to be successful. And otherwise, it's just kind of a cluster of everybody moving in different directions and having different commitments. So that's why my organization is committed not only to watchdogging the city of San Diego and how they're doing on implementing their climate plan, but also making sure that the other cities are kind of understanding what the new day needs to look like and what they're going to need to do to get there. So that's just kind of a super broad brush about what is next in terms of climate planning in the region. As you can see, I mean, we're at a crossroads. Nothing's absolute, nothing's easy. You know, there's no magic pill about how this is going to happen. It's going to be fought in the trenches, on the ground, you know, incrementally, piece by piece. And it's going to take everybody to kind of come together to talk about what the new vision needs to be for future generations. And it's tough, but it's exciting, tough, challenging. It's a whole mix. But that's how I look at the future for the next at least 5 years. And I would say, you know, we're looking for, you know, we have partners with you all, but we always are looking for other people and other cities to kind of come together and help move with us. And happy to take any questions.
Give her a big hand, would you? Nicole is a rock star when it comes to this issue, and I hope you got that tonight. So she's the one that really drove this. Cody, could you jump up here so everybody can? So Cody, again, is our implementer at the city. Stephen, come on up. So Stephen Johnson is the president of the San Diego Renewable Energy Society. He's going to help moderate this Q&A with you. So Stephen Johnson, introduce yourself and a little bit background so they know who you are.
Sure, thanks, Peter. So I'm with SDRES, as Peter said. SDRES and GENI have been working together for several years now. It's a great partnership. SDRES looks at the sort of the region, San Diego. We are a chapter of the American Solar Energy Society, and it's a natural alliance with GENI, who looks at globally getting the world towards a renewable and sustainable future. So I'm Steve Johnston. I've been with SDRES. Well, I've been in San Diego for about 8 years, been with SDRES for about 4 of that. And right now I'm actually working at SDGENI. I'm in the group that processes all of the solar applications. We have one of the best systems in the nation for getting people that have gone solar through the process and connected as quickly as possible. So it's a great company to work for, and it's also integral to the energy future here. So anyways, I'll be moderating the Q&A for our 2 ladies up here.
That's awkward.
So keep your questions succinct if you would. We have
Right in the middle.
respondents here, plus SDG with Stephen. So please raise your hand and be, you know, actually, to get your question on tape, I'm going to do a mic run, all right? Because that's the only way the tape is going to actually catch your question. All right? Who's up here first? Did you have one? Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering, how does the Climate Action Plan reduce maritime emissions? Have you guys partnered with the Port of San Diego or Naval Base? I saw, you know, from your resume that you're very familiar with the Port of San Diego, and I was wondering if you could speak on that.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I was at the Port of San Diego before I came to the city, and we adopted a climate action plan there as well just before about a year ago before I came to the city. So it was one of the first ports in the country to have a climate action plan looking at greenhouse gas emissions and setting targets for reduction there as well. So very similar concepts. You know, there's a kind of a finite list of things you could do to reduce your emissions. So that plan has very similar actions, and they're implementing it and through different maritime activities. So there's different sources of emissions, right? The ships and trucks and cargo handling equipment are much different sources than the city has. So through a lot of different activities there to reduce air pollution, they got a lot of co-benefits of greenhouse gas reduction. So they're doing pretty good in their trajectory.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is if the naval base is doing something similar. The Navy Region Southwest is doing a lot of activity to use renewable energy and renewable fuels. So I don't know what their exact targets are, but they have some pretty bold targets and are setting a lot of precedent there, which is great because the military tends to drive technology. So they're helping us that way.
You mentioned that there were several communities in Northern California that have successfully implemented the community choice energy. What are those communities, and what was their process for getting that implemented?
Yeah, well, it's pretty brutal. It started in Marin County. They're the first ones out of the gate to take advantage of this state program. So the state designed this program and basically said, we want to find a way to allow local governments to take back control of their local energy supply. Because, right, it's kind of makes sense that you'd have local decision making over what energy supply you'd have locally versus decisions happening, kind of far away and not connected to the goals and vision of your own local government. So Marin County was the first one out of the gate, and their utility is called Pacific Gas and Electric, and it was a bloodbath, basically. Millions of dollars PG&E spent to fight this over this tiny little county, Marin. I mean, tiny. PG&E actually also put out a statewide ballot initiative that we all voted on, and I can be the first one to say none of us had any clue what that initiative was really about. We're about the fight going on in Northern California, but it's incredible that intuitively, even though Pacific Gas and Electric spent tens of millions of dollars to win, intuitively people like us down in San Diego voted against it because it just felt wrong. It's crazy. I mean, like the opponents spent like $200,000 to the tens of millions by PG&E, but it's just the public knew what was going on, like on a kind of granular level, or more of a gut level. But yeah, it was a bloodbath. But Marin actually implemented it. So they've had a community choice program for about 5 years, and they have offered lower rates to every single customer class, residential, business, and industrial, with higher renewable energy content. Think about that. Lower rates with higher renewable energy content. This is what competition gets you in the marketplace. It's incredible. And then they had, Sonoma County has also had a successful community choice program. They are also offering lower rates to every single customer class with a higher renewable energy content. And so now you're seeing San Francisco will be launching, I think in April of this year. So the city and county of San Francisco will be launching. They also anticipate offering lower rates and higher renewable energy content. You have the city of Lancaster. They're just kind of operating on their own, but they have a community choice program. And then, because I track all this, there's just like a suite of all these counties. I just don't know Northern California that well, so I could name them, but I could think about naming them, but I couldn't even, Santa Clara, Silicon Valley, they're coming online next. And LA County is also in the process of evaluating community. Because at the end of the day, it's an economic decision, right? If you can offer lower rates to your residents and businesses, why wouldn't you, right? And you can do it successfully, continue to provide electricity reliably to your customers, to your families in your region. It just makes sense. It just makes sense to kind of take control back and kind of put it in the hands of people who are invested in their community locally.
Yeah, I'm Tom Bartley. A little bit about my background, so you know where my questions are coming from. At one point, I was the vice chair of the Chamber Transportation Committee before that was dissolved. For over a decade now, I've been on the Energy and Water Committee there, so I've got quite a bit of background there. I'm an electrical engineer by education, and I've been involved in heavy-duty electric trucks for well over a decade. So I've got a pretty good wide background in transportation and energy. A couple of comments. One, if you want to get some more ammunition for community choice, take a look at Texas, ERCOT. How many choices do people have to choose from when they want to buy their energy in Texas, and their rates are phenomenally low? There's a lot of reasons for that, but the competition is one, Texas. Another one is with Sandag's $2 billion budget for years, I've been trying to get them off the dime to say, take a little bit of this money, a certain percentage every year, and try something new and an innovation. To support all these different plans, I believe it's going to take a lot of innovation and technology, and San Diego is ripe and ready, but it needs support and it needs the right attitude. I'm talking with all the Sandag guys, they have a lot of their top-down pressures, and they're trying to do a good job, but they really aren't putting any money or emphasis into technology to support the goals that need to be supported. So when the chamber sees me coming, they look at me and they say, hey, there's Tom, there's a technology guy. because I know technology is going to be different. So what are we doing to plan for various different types of technology that would help implement that? So what I'm doing is, how can I help you?
I don't know if there's a response. Is there a response to that?
I mean, obviously we're always looking for partners and voices in the community to help convey the necessity of exploring alternative modes of transportation. So there's all the contact information. I'm happy to communicate, and Cody is the building manager at the city, so there's opportunity there. But yeah.
I would just say continue to make our voice heard.
Can you use the mic?
I think Nicole mentioned it earlier, but just continue to be engaged in whatever community groups or whoever your electeds are. Just keep talking to them and sharing with them what your perspectives are. That's how they make their decisions.
Tom, there's a group called EPIC that provides a lot of funding across the state, which certainly you know about. So, I mean, those are other ways to try to look at research and development for new technologies.
Tell them what EPIC is, so they.
It's out of the CEC, which was focused on energy efficiency and renewables, and they provide a lot of funding, quite a bit of funding for large-scale development.
Yeah. One other quick comment. I've recently been part of the Refuel San Diego in their committee meetings. One of the comments in helping local innovation, local jobs, and get a lot of this stuff done was the way contracts are let to make these things happen. Unfortunately, a lot of agencies are, by law and regulation, statute, they cannot put out contracts on the R&D or demonstration type without a cost share. If you want to get young companies with a lot of innovation, you can't put out cost share contracts. We need some policy change. There's got to be some legislation that allows agencies that want to fund these things to put out full profit contracts.
Sorry, I think I have one that works now. New batteries. I'm working on something at the city where we're trying to figure out this innovation concept and how we can be more nimble, because governments traditionally are just not nimble enough to take advantage of new technology. And by the time we procure something and get it in place, we've been leapfrogged over 4 times by something new. So we're trying to figure that out. It's a little bit slower process.
If you want any of my ideas, I'll give you my contact information.
Great, thanks.
Okay, question. One of the holdbacks on renewable energy has been energy storage. So a lot of engineers will say they're for natural gas because you can ignite it when you need the energy. For solar and wind, it can be lower cost, but where's the storage going to come from is one question. And the second one is urban planners, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that high density, once you create it as a solution, generates poverty within 20 years, and it's hard to reverse. So those are 2 questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for sure on the land use side, you need to design projects smartly. And if you look at actually the projects on the ground that are being considered, it's not the kind of New York City high density that they're proposing. It's 3 or 4 stories. I mean, so there are lessons learned and new ideas and approaches to design these projects right. So they allow communities to continue with the same character, and yet allow for the idea of more people living closer to where they work, so they don't have to drive so far on a daily basis. And on the energy side, I think what you would see, I mean, I'm not a technical expert, but you talk to anybody who is a part of the storage industry, and they'll tell you that technology is ready to go, like off the shelf. And actually, California is one of the first states to require the utilities to actually purchase storage, because they believe that the technology is not only ready, but that once you get it into the ground and you start, again, learning and experiencing what it's, how it integrates into the grid and how it, you need to modulate the grid and all those variables, they're learning as they're putting the storage in. So, and you have people like Elon Musk in this market space with Solar City. I mean, there are brilliant players who are going to figure this out. And so it's a combination of energy efficiency, demand response, energy storage, and the clean technologies all coming together in a effective and efficient way so that we don't need natural gas.
And just excuse me, adding on to that, that when policies like this are set at the local level or regional or state level, that tends to drive technology in the marketplace to shift a little bit. So for something, as an example, for solar, now that we have this kind of stable environment to invest in, businesses will see that as an opportunity to kind of dive in deeper to those technologies and further develop them. So that's hopefully how it's going to work.
Yeah, and I have a history with this audience. I know that we love to go into the technical world, but just a reminder that this is more about the policy and the climate action plan, and to kind of keep the questions in that area, if you could.
Excuse me. I'm Bill. Your comments about community choice aggregation and the fact that the plans that have been put into place so far are reducing rates for all classes of customers made me think that there must be a lot of business interests other than the utilities and the fossil fuel companies who would actually benefit from community choice aggregation. I was kind of imagining that that must be a very large but maybe sleeping body of very potentially influential allies. I wanted to know if there is this pool of other business interests that would be on your side, whether they're engaged, who they might be, and how they could be engaged.
Yeah, that's a great question. I totally agree. They're like a sleeping giant. Because at the end of the day, right, they're all about their bottom line. And if we have a proposal to help them shave costs, I mean, they're right on board, and they want to figure it out. So yeah, but I mean, you have to think about that in the context of how politics works. And unfortunately, there is sort of just still kind of an old guard, kind of just old school way of thinking, and it's figuring out a way for us to communicate with the business community so that they understand what the benefits are. But it's slowly but surely happening, and it's partly happening because of the businesses that have experienced the benefits in these other communities. So a perfect example is somebody in town who, God, I'm going to forget the name of his business on San Diego Bay, Campland by the Bay. He also owns property in Sonoma County. He personally contacted me and said, what can I do to get community choice in San Diego? Because my properties are benefiting in Sonoma. I don't want PG&E, I don't want SDG&E anymore. What is it going to take? So that's just the beginning, as we see kind of these businesses in Northern California seeing, having connections or relationships in Southern California. I think we're, slowly but surely we're going to see this. I believe the push ultimately for community choice is going to come from the business community, even more than the residential community.
May I follow? I have a follow-up question. You were talking about the old guard. You talked about the old guard mentality. It made me think that there are some industries in San Diego and in the state who, though not necessarily particularly energy intensive, must at least be a little bit more youthful in their thinking. And I was thinking about biotech in San Diego and then also Silicon Valley. I wondered, is there any chance of enlisting some of those people, if only because of quality of life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just a question of how do we reach them, right? And just educating them, making them aware of what the options are and that there could be choice in the marketplace. I mean, it's so easy to sell, right? I mean, these are capitalists. These are entrepreneurs. You start talking to them about innovation and competition in the market, they're like, tell me more. I mean, these are, this is the American way. Give me a break, right? I mean, this is so, but it's a question of, I mean, they aren't necessarily in my immediate circle. I mean, I'm a political animal and a policy advocate. Like, I don't really go to biotech community meetings, or whatever trade group meetings. But again, I mean but this process is just starting. So,
and I could add on to that a little bit. But I think
you need to go there.
Yeah, I think Peter mentioned when our plan got adopted, it was a unanimous vote. So that means the entire council supported it and our mayor supported it. And we received comment letters from groups like Clean Tech San Diego, who is a business association, and they see the value in this plan. The Chamber of Commerce also provided support letters. So we got a lot of support from folks. I think the next step is now to educate them on the details and understand what these things are.
Thank you very much. This is Paul Michael Decker, IT Director here at the Sims Center. I'm interested in two particular issues. One is light rail, especially along the I-5 corridor and the I-15 corridor. Knowing that double tracking is in progress, how does the Climate Action Plan accelerate that? the implementation of additional light rail in San Diego along those interstate corridors, as well as I'll call it east-west corridors also along already existing freeways. That's issue number one. Issue number two is how are you addressing, I'll call it the energy cost of water here in the county?
You all like your compound questions, don't you? Okay, first question. The city's plan, we look at transportation in transit priority areas. So as I think Nicole went through the SANDAG plan, that we have a regional transportation agency that plans those freeways and the major transit issues. So we're looking at how can we increase density in areas so that people are close to we call them high quality transit stops. So places where there's frequent transit, buses and trolley lines, and people can walk and bike in those areas. So that's how we contribute to that. We also have a vote at SANDAG. So the next time their plan comes around and we're voting on it, now that we have our own plan adopted, hopefully we try to make those two things align a little bit better. Your second question was on the energy use in water, right? So looking at that, the city, with the drought the last year or so, we've been assigned a lot of reduction targets. So we've been reducing water use kind of separate from this climate action plan anyway. Looking at diversifying our water sources so that we can actually have more water local rather than relying on the Delta and the Colorado River as much. So the calculations for the life cycle of that, whether, pumping water all the way up from the north or from the Colorado River, shifting that energy use more locally, but transmitting less water, less distance. So we're trying to juggle those things. We haven't figured out all the calculations yet, but we're working on that. And another way to offset that energy use is also with renewable energy.
Great.
Well, in keeping, I have a two-part question for Cody.
Of course. I should have brought a notebook.
So in coming up with your actual implementation, how would that affect the votes we have at SANDAG from the city in that, because we just had a vote on the RTP that was inconsistent with the climate action plan by the two votes from the city. So I'm interested in knowing how are you going to get those votes to be affected by your action plan? Will it specify that the votes have to be consistent with the climate action plan? And second part of that would be much of SANDAG's plans for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and for that matter, what I typically hear are plans that are not economically just. That we care more about people along the coast than people in urban areas that are suffering from climate change. And the cost, like the Quality of Life Initiative, bores increasingly more cost on low-income communities to deal with reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. And then we go into technology thinking that it's going to be the savior, when that just means more money coming from poor people to help rich people drive electric cars. So my question would be, in your implementation, will you consider economic justice? That is, making sure that the people who do have to get cleaner pay for that themselves to get cleaner, and not tax poor people in order to do that.
So the first part of your question, I think actually both parts of your question sort of relate to SANDAG and what they're doing. So for the vote, my plan will not tell City Council how to vote at SANDAG. Unfortunately, I don't have that authority. So I'll look at our climate action plan and the actions within that to say how are we going to start implementing those over the next 19 years, and we'll start with the near term, obviously. So that's going to be something we'll have another giant conversation about that, I'm sure, at the city when that vote comes up again. But one of the things we are committed to in the plan is tracking our metrics for what we're doing. And that kind of ties into the equity question a bit, where we added in some metrics for tracking equity. And that's a very new area to track and actually see what those metrics mean. So we added in some commitments to do that and figure out what that actually looks like. So I'm trying to figure that out now and working with cities like Portland who have started digging into that a little bit too, to see how we're investing our money in those communities. And then as far as that specific to transit goes, that's something that hopefully SANDAG will be looking at as well.
Right. And just before we go to the next question, so speaking of the implementation plan, what's the level of confidence in meeting the deadline?
The 2035 goals?
No, the implementation plan.
Oh, sorry. I'm very confident.
I'm wondering what kind of assistance we might be able to get from the federal government, specifically in the form of the EPA. And 'cause I'm from Chicago, and back in the 90s, the EPA gave us millions of dollars for urban heat island reduction by planting trees and taking out the left turn lane and put it in planting meetings, miles and miles of planting medians. That's really my main question. Is that a viable? Is there anything in the federal government that aligns with what we're trying to achieve? And is there any financial assistance that we could draw upon?
Yeah, if you have anything to add, please jump in here. But there's probably, for the most part, there's grants available from the federal government. Not tons related to climate change and greenhouse gas reductions as much. There's some, they put out some grant funding for transportation and things recently. We did just get a grant for our region from NOAA, which is a federal agency, to do a coastal sea level rise analysis. So it's almost $700,000 for our region to do an analysis of vulnerabilities along the coast and look at some policy issues there that continually stop us from making progress in that area, and help us do some further analysis. So there is grant funding available. It's just not as prolific and easy to get.
In the state, because for the trees, didn't you guys?
Yeah, we got state grants for planting trees as well. There's we're getting some state grants as well to help implement these things, especially because California is setting a lot of policies, so they're providing some funds to help support the action there. The federal government, as you all probably know, is setting less policy in this arena, so they're providing less funding.
Can we take advantage of the cap and trade program at all?
Yes.
And
I
believe Nicole, is this right? The Department of Energy also helped partially fund the Climate Action Plan development.
Oh, yeah. So remember when Obama had his stimulus package, and he actually did focus some of that investment into helping cities develop climate action plans. And that is actually that was the seed money that got this whole plan funded back in 2010.
But we're trying to share the love here. Yeah, I was trying to help answer that question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question. But we should not forget that $40 billion of SANDAG's money for transportation, federal and state money, it can be changed to build transit. City of Portland stopped expanding freeways 25, 30 years ago. They didn't lose any state or federal money. So highway money can be spent on transit if the local entity wants to do so. So SANDAG is saying that $40 billion is not available, which is not true. If they want, that $40 billion of what they're using to expand freeways can be used to expand our transit program. That's why we don't need quality of life. So it's an allocation problem. It's not a availability issue.
Great, thanks for that clarification. Ray?
How ambitious is the city to implement LEED principles and practices in construction and housing development and zero energy ready homes? What is their plan on that as far as construction and development?
So we have a couple of policies in the plan that call for creating energy benchmarking programs for the city, ordinances actually for both residential and commercial. It's late and I'm getting tired. I can't think of anything. Thank you. Zero net energy for new construction. The city already has for our own operations, our own facilities, a LEED Silver requirement. And then, of course, we have Title 24 coming out now, which is practically LEED Silver in itself. So there may be other things. Just drawing a blank right now.
Yeah, but I mean, so there are policies within the plan for new construction. It's just that the majority of greenhouse gas emissions are from existing infrastructure, existing housing and building stock. And so the focus is not as much on new construction as it is on existing.
Right.
We do implement more cradle to cradle within the zoning or building ordinances with construction materials. That's a huge portion of the waste in greenhouse gases with raw material extraction and things like that. So I think we should probably focus on that.
Yeah, we are adding some land use code updates to make either solar-ready homes, so they don't have to have solar on them right away, but they're plumbed essentially for that, so that if the homeowner decides, it's a much easier, more cost-effective for them. Similar for EV infrastructure, for electric vehicle infrastructure. We're looking at updating, this is not part of our plan, but we're still looking at updating the sustainable building policy to actually make that a little bit more aggressive and create incentives for expedited permitting processing if you build a more sustainable facility as well.
What about the environmental studies? Streamline that as well?
Oh, the cap in theory is going to help with that. So we're working on some details to help streamline that process as well. That's actually a good point. And that was one of the initial reasons why we did a climate action plan, was to help streamline that environmental review process. If you're consistent with the cap, then you can move forward quicker.
And, since this was made into law, as we get to the next question, could you just talk a little bit more about what are the repercussions to the city? You mentioned that the city could be sued. Who would benefit from that other than the legal profession?
Well, it would basically force the hand of the city to start investing the necessary resources to achieve their goals. I mean, that's basically what the remedy would be. Sort of saying, okay, city, $1 billion budget. How much are you spending to implement the climate plan and achieve its goals? That would be the benefit.
$3 billion, I looked it up.
Oh, $3 billion, holy cow. So that's what the court would say. That would be the remedy. It would basically just kind of say to the city, you're not doing enough. You need to invest more of your $3 billion budget on bike lanes, on sidewalks, on compact mixed-use development, on clean energy, that kind of stuff.
So suing it wouldn't result in the city paying somebody else. It would just be
attorney's fees.
Attorney's fees, right?
By the
Other
way,
than attorney fees.
people should know the County of San Diego was so intransigent. Is that the right word? God, it is 8 o'clock. That they defied state law about complying with their climate requirements, and they fought the environmental community up until the Supreme Court and paid out $1 million in attorney's fees using taxpayer dollars just because they didn't want to do the right thing and they didn't want to implement a legally binding climate plan. Supreme Court said, sorry, not only do you now have to waste taxpayer dollars because you chose to fight them in lieu of complying, so you have to pay these attorneys, and you have to rescind the voluntary, basically worthless plan that you have and develop a whole new one. So it's just, really, unfortunately, sometimes for local governments, when elected officials don't want to do the right thing, you kind of have to tie their hands and force them to do the right thing.
I assume you have a website, or you've got your communication list there.
Yes.
But I'm wondering how else you would plan to communicate with the public so that they can support you. And in particular, volunteer opportunities and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have, on our website, climateactioncampaign.org, a place for people to sign up. And then we have regular emails that we send out to people, calls to action, opportunities to volunteer, events, and educational opportunities, presentations that we're doing. Yeah, so we'd love to have you engaged.
Well, not for me.
Oh, well, anybody.
Because I already have my way of getting involved. But I was wondering there are a lot of people out there who have no idea what you're doing.
Oh yeah, well, it's hard. We're one small organization, so it's hard to get the message out to the entire community. But luckily, our biggest asset, to be honest, is earned media. We actually have a pretty high profile in the public sphere through media, so social media as well as TV and radio and all those kinds of things. So we're trying.
That's also part of the city's job, is to get the word out too. So as we engage residents in helping achieve these goals, it's going to take everybody to do something. So hopefully we will engage a little bit more on those topics and share, here's incentives, here's opportunities, all those things to get involved. But, there's a lot of planning groups and a lot of different ways that people can engage to understand pieces of these topics that they're interested in.
All right. So I think we have time for one last question. We'll take it back to the back here.
Hi. So I have a question concerning I believe it's, I've seen it at the end of the Climate Action Plan text. It's about job opportunities, and it's something that hasn't been really mentioned here. Are you planning to hire a team of professional innovators, have people coming here with ideas and suggestions, or is it just something that you consider indirectly, such as solar panel installers, or is there going to be a department in charge of implementing fully this plan on the field and through other IDs?
You're looking at the department right here. So we, and I'm being joking a bit, the city does have staff that are implementing different things in different departments. My role is to coordinate all of that. Another piece of my role that I personally take on, but also I'm trying to fit it into my role at the city, is looking at innovation. And you know, the city of San Diego has this really amazing innovation and clean tech sector. We're ranked number 4 for metro areas for clean tech. We're ranked in the country. We're ranked, we have something like 25,000 clean economy jobs here. So it's a growing sector. It's providing a lot of jobs. It's something that we care about as a city, separate from, you know, climate, is providing a quality of life. We also have that quality of life that attracts people. And we have a really smart workforce here, a really innovative workforce. So we're trying to take advantage of all that and present all of our sustainability challenges as opportunities to the business sector to make that kind of a win-win. One fun note, we're working on a hackathon at the end of the month. If any of you are programmers or know any programmers, that will be sustainability focused, and see, you know, if we could share all of our data, which that's another area we're working on being better about, how we can help foster these innovative programmers and hackers to solve some of these problems that we have, because half of this is metrics based.
Yeah, and I would say that there will be a implementation committee with the city council, and I totally agree. We need the best and brightest minds with, you know, all the ideas put forward, because it's going to take everybody and all their ingenuity to figure this all out. So for sure, and those meetings will be public, and I believe there'll be opportunities for people to participate and engage and, you know, kind of convey new ideas and thoughts and recommendations for the city. I mean, there are plenty of ways to participate it, but it does take a little other step, like, you know, signing up to the emails that my organization sends out, just because we try to get the word out about opportunities for people in this sector to engage. And hopefully, you know, Cody, she's just developing her department of one, but hopefully she'll be getting more staff, and then she can also, you know, send out information about how to engage. Because I totally agree with you. I mean, we have some brilliant people here in this community, and we need everybody to figure this out, because it's not going to be easy.
Well, I think this has been a great Q&A. I think we've touched on each of the 5 strategies. We touched on buildings and water and transportation, waste, energy supply, and the tree canopy. So it was a great discussion. I'd ask Nicole, just as a parting highlight, so through this whole process, and obviously you were instrumental in getting us to where we are, what's the you know, what's the 1 or 2 highlights of the whole process, or you know, something that, you know, personally you'd tell in a, you know, you'd tell to some folks 20 years from now about a highlight of the process?
I think the highlight of the process is that we had a Republican mayor and a unanimous bipartisan council support this plan. I think that is unprecedented. I mean, just look where the Republican presidential candidates are at with climate change. I mean, like, honestly, denying the existence of climate change. And I think, you know, I've had calls from Cleveland, Ohio, and Pittsburgh, and like I said, I went on the radio with LA, trying to figure out how in the world we did this, and how they can replicate our success. So for me, 20 years from now, the idea being that all these other big cities are kind of stepping up to the plate and figuring out how to achieve the same goals that we're going to achieve, that's what it's all about. So replicating and scaling our success, to me, would be the best outcome. And hopefully it's happening.
I agree. That's great. Well, let's thank these 2 ladies for coming and talk. Not only coming to talk with us, but also getting this plan to where it is. So thank you both.
Great to have outstanding leaders in our community. You know, I was just up in Palo Alto yesterday and this morning, and they are looking at what we're doing here to figure out how to do it there. You know, people look to Palo Alto to what they're doing. They're looking at us. And I loved that. You know, so I really want to acknowledge both of you and us as a community. I mean, clearly we are doing something that the world is paying attention to. A couple quick announcements, just so I want to wrap this up real quick. If you want to know about this 100% renewable initiative, again, it's with us and the San Diego Renewable Energy Society. It's up here on number 1. This is the website. It's on our Sim Center website. There's a lot of content there. Scroll down. There's a video with me on the on the top there, but scroll down a little bit more, Paul Michael. Those are our partners. You can take the pledge. So you individually can take the pledge to be 100% renewable commitment. There's sponsorship opportunities. And Paul Michael, go ahead and click on the Make a Difference Today, that Take Action button. So this is a great tool. So if you want to know what you can do, as I mentioned there, scroll down a little bit further. If you are a renter, there's a bronze, silver, gold, and platinum category. And go ahead and click on bronze. So those are the things that you can do. Shut off your computer. You can wait until to do your full load of laundry at a different time of day. Easy things to do that cost no money. But if you want to do something that's a little bit more expensive, then you click on the platinum level and you can go buy the electric car. You can buy the Prius. There's a certain things that you can't do as a homeowner that you, as a renter, that you can do as a homeowner. So there's a whole laundry list of great things that you can do, from the easy, non-expensive to the little bit harder, more expensive, no matter where you live or no matter where you work. So that's a great tool, and Stine is coordinating that work and making that page even more functional. The commercial for next week, it's up on number 3. We have a unique opportunity. There's a man, Frank Scarpelli, I'm saying his name, Frank Scarpassi. He is an expert at what it means to be a socially conscious business through something called B Corps. A lot of us in this world work in the nonprofit space, and some of us work in the for-profit space. There's something in between a socially responsible company, and there are many of them out there that are like that. Some of the logos are there. So he will come in here, and if you've got questions on how to actually do good and make a profit, we're going to be hosting that next Wednesday night. Would love to have you come back. That's our green scene evening. We'll be doing it at the exact same time as we do this, from 6 to 8 o'clock. With that, I want to thank Stine for taking over the 100% Renewable Initiative, Cody for being here from the city and really being our point person at the city, Nicole, my gosh, for being the ever-ready bunny. She goes to more meetings and more council sessions on her bike, on her bicycle. Amazing. In her high heels. That's a great evening. Thank you all for being here. Come back again soon. Thanks a lot.